You don't, when you go to your house, but you're home, you don't pay any attention. When you look in the mirror, you don't even see your eye. You don't see your nose unless that's what you're looking for. You only see what you're looking for. So I'm saying that we have to be so comfortable with who we are until we don't have to look for it anymore. We're just it. And I believe that Revelations is the source of our being able to get to that place. And when I began in a second talking about Revelation, we ready in a moment? Okay, when I began talking about Revelation, we're going to deal with it from, maybe you've heard it before, but I haven't. And for those of you who know me, you know that there's one book I'm saying, it's there. I don't have any concern in it. I have no revelation, and I wouldn't touch it because I did not feel
for security purposes, this
that
call has been terminated.
I did not feel that it was time for me to touch it because I had no understanding of it other than the understanding that I disagreed with, and the thing that I disagreed with was primarily the whole concept of Revelation being about some horrific thing called Armageddon and the apocalypse. The apocalypse simply means and the rapture, which is crazy in itself, has absolutely no basis in Scripture. So I'm going to begin with Revelations, and I want to look at the first chapter. I want to show you something there, if I may, in that first chapter. Where is it? It is my contention that I'm gonna wait, Janice, until you get set up, okay? So to get people up.
That's it. He's the only one.
Oh, he's the only one. Okay, hey, only one.
Hello. No.
Hey, number one?
I'm blessing you, number one.
I appreciate it.
This is my contention. First of all, the word itself, the Aramaic word of Revelation means is actually divine, and it comes from a root that means to uncover, to unveil, or to reveal something, or to make known. It also has as its root the idea of a dream or a vision. And the book it describes the method of awareness that begins to relate in the establishment of the individual and the whole of mankind being aware of its messianic nature. This is what the purpose of this book is. First of all, let's understand something. Revelation clearly tells us that Jesus was not aware of everything. It clearly tells us that.
Say that again, Sage?
Jesus was not aware of everything.
It's kind of hard to imagine.
Yeah.
Well, that's because you haven't read it until right now. You get ready to read it.
Oh, okay. I thought it was.
You get ready to read it. That Jesus was not aware of everything. The first verse in that first chapter of Revelation says, the revelation of Jesus Christ which God gave him. See that?
Mm-hmm.
If it was given to him, that means he didn't have it.
True.
So he did not have everything. Now, this is what it's saying. It is talking about, when it says Jesus Messiah, it is not talking about Jesus with the Christ being his last name. It's distinguishing Yeshua from all the other Yeshuas who lived during that time, who were not aware of their messianic nature. Okay? And it says that Elohim, Allah, gave him this revelation. So this is revelation that was given to Allah, Jesus the human. This is when we say we had an epiphany, or this is when we say something was revealed to us. It is the higher nature, or it is the essence of our being in the other world that brings it into this world where we are naturally residing. You understand that? So when I say that Jesus did not was not aware of everything, the verses that go from this point forward will help us to see that he was not aware of everything. And it began to talk about the things that he was made aware of. So as we move forward, I think we need to keep that in mind, that the very things that we are being made aware of right now in relationship to what's being said are the same things that he had to be made aware of. You got that? So I believe that it is time for us to be made aware of what this book or these writings are about. Why? Because there has never been a time in the earth that I am aware of where these scriptures were, this particular book was discussed in the way that we are about to do it. And the reason it has been translated, interpreted the way that it has, is because it has been translated by the children.
What children?
The youngest people of mankind. Mm-hmm. The youngest humans on earth are Europeans. And that's who translated it. And that's who interpreted it the way we see it now. So the children are the ones who did it. Now, let me show you something else about it. The church itself is established exactly the way the Roman government was established. What I mean by that is this. When the Greeks and other nations went into nations to conquer them, they took the people from their land and made them slaves in Greece or in the country that they came from. The Romans didn't do that. When the Essenes sent for the Romans to come in to help them fight in Jerusalem, the Romans stayed. Everywhere the Romans, and what they did, they made you a Roman wherever you were, wherever they were. They sent governors to rule over different areas that they had conquered. And those governors, their primary responsibility was to make that nation a nation of Romans. And the nation of Romans had nothing to do with what your physical appearance was. It had everything to do with uprooting your culture with the Roman culture. And one of the things that Jesus said, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar, and unto God that which is God. In other words, those natural things that Caesar claimed, let them have them. But don't forget whose you are. And when we look at the way this government was set up, the Catholic Church did exactly the same thing. The Catholic Church went into other nations and made the people Catholics. Just like the Romans went into other nations and made people Romans. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. Now, when this took place, there was no vote. Whatever Caesar said, whatever the governor said, that was it. There was no democracy at all. I don't know whether I'm doing something.
That's weird.
That is very weird. There was no democracy at all. You what got something to say?
No, go ahead. I accidentally pressed the button and I've never done it before and it made a noise. I stopped.
Okay. So you were not purposely trying to irritate Janice.
No.
I was gonna blame it on you too, Sheldon, but I was like, I'll be nice today.
So the Roman Church was set up the same way, and the reason that the Roman Church has been so successful is because the universe responds to it. And the reason the universe responds to the Roman Church is because the Roman Church is set up like a kingdom. Rome was set up like a kingdom. And the Roman Church took its lead from the Roman government. And it was set up like a kingdom. It was set up the way that the kingdom in the scriptures is described. The country that we are in is supposed to be a democracy, or actually it's a republic. It's not even that anymore. We don't know what the hell it is. We don't know what it is. I'm sorry. But whatever it is not a kingdom. And the problem that we have in trying to be who we were created to be, as opposed to who we have been told we are, is that we are trying to travel the road of kingdom at the same time that we are espousing democracy. And those two things don't fit.
What do you mean by we?
The people in this country, the church folks, and we in this room being the same. Up until this point anyway, when we began to recognize the danger of the diametrics. Okay? So when we look at the Revelation, we have to look at it through kingdom eyes, and not through eyes of democracy. Not through the eyes of the Roman Church, but through the eyes of Yeshua, of John, or the eyes of the one who was given the revelation. Because if Jesus was given the revelation, then we also have been given it. We are just not beginning to recognize it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I'll
Now-
go back a little bit to what you said about the difference. The problem with knowing who we are is that we're trying to establish kingdom. Did you say through the eyes of
Through the eyes of democracy.
Wherein kingdom, democracy, you vote on something. Kingdom, if you don't vote, you don't get a vote.
No,
You just
right.
okay.
And let me take that a step further. Before then, I get back into the words that's written in Revelations. The principles that we are about to talk about and have talked about in the past, they are not up for a vote. Period. The principles that we have talked about are no different than the principle of gravity. You don't vote on whether or not gravity is going to work. That you don't get a vote. It is what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you think you can vote on it, then go on top of this building, take a vote and jump. And see if you're going to be suspended in midair. That's how kingdom principles work. The law has already been established. You cannot change that. However, the Roman Church established itself as a kingdom, and it began to change that. It began to translate and interpret the laws, the principles of the kingdom in the scriptures in a manner that would give them total authority over mankind and give them the opportunity to be extremely manipulative and controlling in every aspect of the life of the human. And that control is not just in the kingdom sense, but it also is being manipulated through democracy, making you think that you have a right to vote in the church, and you are making decisions no different than you have a right to vote for those who represent you in government, and you think you're making a decision, but you really aren't. The only thing that you vote on in the church is what is put in front of you. So it's a win-win for whoever's putting it in front of you. The only choice you make when you go to vote in an election is the choice that has been made for you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to choose between these people that we have given you to choose from, right?
Mm-hmm.
You truly don't have that right. So it is still a surreptitious kingdom that's being manipulated, and so we have to not only be aware of that, but more importantly, aware of the it that we are. Got it? Okay. Then it says that after having said that the revelation of Jesus Christ which God gave unto him to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. And he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John. Now, I want you to understand something. If this revelation was given to Jesus by God for the purpose of being shown to the servants of Jesus or the adherents to what Jesus taught, and it was given to John for the express purpose of establishing it through writing, so that it can be available to all of those who have submitted to the teachings of Jesus. Okay? Now, the teachings of Jesus had very little to do with whether or not you're registered to vote or whether or not you have a house to live in. If we look at Jesus as a soul, and we look at it from that perspective only, then we begin to lose sight of something. If we have to fight for social and economic justice at the expense of spiritual understanding, then we are in a quagmire that will never change. Why? Because at the point that we begin to fight for social justice at the expense of spiritual awareness, we are denying, because Yahweh is shepherding me, I have no lack. When we understand and accept that because we are being shepherded on a continuous basis by Yahweh, there is no lack, then we don't have to concern ourselves as much with the social justice issues. The primary thing has to be spiritual awareness, and everything else begins to fall into place. But when we begin to deal with the social justice issue, it is an issue that becomes a distraction from the reality of what we are supposed to be doing and who we are. You got that? Mm-hmm. Now, yeah.
I mean, I think what you're saying, or what I understand, is the connection between the two, and the fundamental flooring or foundation is the spiritual growth and awareness. But what happens is, if somebody can make you separate the two and focus on the one, then you're going to be lost, because you're coming at it from an incomplete awareness in the first place. So, but on the other side, I don't know how you have a legitimate social justice effort without sensing its validity because of the spiritual roots of it. I mean, think of the things Martin Luther King, I mean, you know, all that, the stuff that we hold to be genuine revolution, whatever you want to call it, it seems to have that connection.
Okay, and you're
So
right.
the effort of the establishment is to separate, and then they can confuse you more with Now, take immigration, whatever you want, the whole concept of we're one human, and blah, blah, they just, now they can make it into 1,000 different pieces.
And you're right, and that's exactly what I'm saying, that it has been separated into a little ball by itself. This is social justice over here, and this is the spiritual stuff over here. Or the spiritual stuff doesn't exist at all because it has been interwoven with the social justice thing, and you don't even know what the spiritual essence of it really is anyway. Now, this is my contention, that if we on the kingdom, the other stuff will take care of itself. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and righteousness, all this other stuff will take care of itself. Now, this is the reason I believe, and I'm digressing a moment. I guess when you get over 60, you can do that with your This is the reason why I believe that it is imperative that I pull together the teachers at some point soon, so that we can deal with this thing. Because regardless of what anyone thinks or believes, I believe that we have been brought together as facilitators for the express purpose of being singly focused on an awareness of the spiritual essence of everything that is, so that the result of it will be a change in all of this natural stuff that we see. But if we try to balance the two on our own, we have been so caught up in what you just described as the distraction or as the social justice thing, until we don't know the power of the spiritual. Because we have marched, we have voted, we have done all of these things that we thought was going to bring about change. And we don't know where one cuts off and the other one picks up. So the single focus has to be on the spiritual awareness, and then in allowing the universe or allowing the Creator to do the merging itself.
But did we not have to do those things?
Oh, yes.
The marchings, et cetera, the physical representation of that spiritual thing, if it got us where we are now, understanding that there's a deeper spiritual purpose for all of us, and now that we understand that, yeah, in its time,
Right.
that was needful, because if it had not occurred in its time, there's some things that we would not be aware of today.
Well, and honestly, you're absolutely right. It had to take place, but something else had to take place too. Look at us. If things had not taken place, the things that you just talked about, if they had not taken place when they did, we would not have the freedom of and freedom, I don't mean freedom versus slavery, I'm talking about in terms of time. To do what we do. In other words, when I first started preaching, the pastor would tell me, you're different than the rest of us. You won't have another job in pastor. And I never understood why they told me that. The reason they said, I never understood that. And I always wanted to do the both. But now I understand. I needed the freedom to study. And I felt so guilty about studying until I felt like I wasn't working. You know, because I saw all of them doing the other stuff called work. And if you look in this room, the people who are working have the express freedom to study. There's not one of the teachers, not one of the facilitators anywhere who don't have opportunity to study because of where they work. But the only reason these opportunities were opened up to work so that you will have time for this is because of what transpired previously, the political aspects of it. You see what I'm talking about? So that's what opened the doors to that. And the funny thing, I thought about Nick this week while I was there at the memorial and the funeral. And what made me think about it is that when we were there gathered, this guy, one of my closest Sosa said something. That's okay. Said something about me and some of the things that I did, and I'm not going to get into that. Take too long, but it dawned on me because he was teasing me about being junior. I was the youngest one out of all of them, and one of the things that was said, "A child shall lead them," and I thought about Nick being in the same position now that I was in then. You see what I'm talking about? The youngest of all the facilitators was who? Nick. And the youngest of all the organizers with whom I worked was me. And I'm trying to see the connection there. I think the connection is probably the political, as you mentioned, being done, and now it's the spiritual, with Nick having absolutely no experience whatsoever in dealing with the whole civil rights issue. None. No exposure, and he doesn't need it, because it will only serve to tame him. You see what I'm talking about? So I see that he's the other side of the coin type thing.
Haven't we also exhausted pretty much all the possibilities of getting, I don't know, I guess achieving social justice through what? Democracy?
I don't think we've exhausted the possibilities of being deluded into believing we can. Let me explain what I'm saying.
Okay.
The whole idea of the civil rights thing was an illusion. And it convinced us that we could achieve it this way. And we saw that what it actually did was just open the door enough for us to be able to be in places of employment so we have time to really see what's going on. Got it?
I was thinking about it from the perspective of, we have a black president, we've had Occupy Wall Street, we've had all these different things happen, and yet nothing has changed.
Right. And you know what the funny thing is? I think more than being depleted, the people who could do it are exhausted. Because I was telling people on the way down that, I said, you know what? I guarantee you that we can go into Ferguson, Missouri tomorrow and change it in less than a week. We could organize that place and change the whole concept in less than a week.
Sheldon's waiting.
He is dying to say something.
And go ahead, Sheldon. I want to get through this other verses.
Well, what Miss Barbara said about it being necessary was definitely necessary. But how our awareness grows as well, as it grows individually, or we become more aware, all of us become more aware together as well. And so with just that it coming out and you being able to see that in D.C., it becoming apparent was the same thing as all of us becoming aware that, it's time to do that. We were aware of it, but now it's like really bright in front of our faces, etc. But the difference of the thing to think about, and everyone who's listening should be able to relate to this metaphor, as a direct metaphor as it relates to social justice. Social justice is only as effective as the equivalent of trying to get some person who you think you love to stay there with you, even though that their heart is not there, which is why we're working on the hearts of people's awareness and not their physical actions. You can make that person do whatever you want them to do. However, if their heart is not in it, and you're not connected, you're not going to feel that thing that you yearn for. You're not going to feel completed at all or anything like that. It's just the physical actions that are not taking place. And typically, it's just that the physical actions are being taken place. And most of the time, as someone who's not aware and they feel like they're in love and they're trying to control this particular thing, they do not realize that they want something more than that person just treating them in a certain way in physical actions until they get to that point and they're like, this is not fulfilling, this is not what I wanted. Now all of a sudden it changes into, you don't want to do this, you're only doing it because I told you to do it. That is the equivalent of what social justice is. Getting all the rights, but you're making the person give you the rights and you don't want them.
And that's equivalent to what we experience every day. All the rules are made to keep the rulers in place. All the rules, and to keep you out. And if you don't understand how to circumvent them, you're always on the outside. I got you. And to me, this is what I normally say, is that the only difference between a street thug and a thug in a suit and tie is that the thug in the suit and tie make the rules to protect him. He's protected by the rules that he makes. And the other one does not have the position or the power to make rules. Look what Bill Clinton did. He smoked weed, but he made it a felony for everybody else who smoked weed, who were kids, primarily black kids. You see what I'm talking about? Look what Bill Clinton did. Bill Clinton said, I love black folks, but you ain't going to college. You can't stay in the house project when you come out of jail with your mama because you're a felon. Look what Bill Clinton did. Let's increase the loans and decrease the grants. You see what I'm talking about? So the rules were made by somebody who talked about they love you. But the rules that were made were the same rules that helped uncover or take the rug off of the dirt of racism and vitriolic speech. You know, that's what those kinds of things happened. And it was happening at the time when people were being rocked to sleep and believing that this person has my best interest at heart. When his heart was not any different than the hearts of those who were perpetuating those things in the first place.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, what strikes me is, I mean, if you have sort of any understanding or any faith in what the original concepts of the Constitution, Declaration, all that were, it was to lay a groundwork that allowed the space to be there for people to find a better understanding of freedoms and things like that. But if you think, so I mean, your comment, I think Denise was, has democracy run its course?
Well, excuse me, say that again.
I don't know that I can. Because I was using that to get somewhere else.
Okay. It's
Well,
just
no,
something
my-
that popped in my head, that's all.
Okay, well, I mean, my sense is, knowingly or intuitively, or some mix, I think our founding fathers, forget all the other parts of that, fathers, not mothers, blah, 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 just that, had enough something to say, let's create a foundation that we know will somehow will allow for a space to be created that people, if they can mature, can grow with, right? So they didn't stop slavery, they didn't stop all that, but I don't think they had a sense that all that was going to stay the same. They created something that allowed for people to grow, if you like, through awareness, whatever, to some broader definition of it. This is the fight we have in this country every day. Do we go backwards or forwards, kind of thing. So I think if there's a sense of democracy now, which is what I think the opposition wants you to believe, has run its course, it's flat, it's not responsive, it's because the box we designed that we call democracy doesn't suit us anymore. So you got some people saying that's your fault because it's the concept of democracy, and you have other people saying, no, we need to redefine it in a new way. And that, I think, is the struggle. Just as it is inside of you, maybe, holding on to the old understandings versus stepping out with a certain trepidation to allow yourself to see something in a different way and then see how that affects you. You know what I'm trying to say? So that's I think, always, been the struggle. And any power structure, particularly if it's essentially following a Roman-like model, it wants things to be stable. Let's pick your issue, progress in a calm, rational way, which 9 times out of 10, just like you, when you rebelled against your parents, if you did
to be rulers or to have opportunities to be in a position of ruling. Because when they established this country, if you did not own a certain amount of land, you couldn't vote. And definitely, if they owned you, you could vote. Meaning slaves could not vote, but they were counted in terms of the representatives that were coming from the southern states. The other thing is that women could not vote either. So if you didn't own property, and if you were a female, and if you were a slave, you could not vote. So I don't see a foundation having been laid for people to grow out of this when it was codified that these things would not happen. And the codification was in the Constitution itself.
Then why does it happen?
The reason it happened, I'm saying that they did not intend for it to happen. It happened because there were those who saw the injustice in that, and they are the ones who began to make it happen. The only reason that women really got to vote is because they stopped doing stuff at home. When Susan B. Anthony and others began to talk about the need for females to vote, and they told them what to stop doing at home, not only cleaning, but the other stuff too. That's what pushed those men to a place where they began to recognize the female to vote. The reason that Africans who were enslaved were able to vote is not because somebody's heart changed, in terms of, not because the writers of the Constitution wanted that to be. We were given the right to vote because there were people who began to see that these folk are willing to die to vote. Mm-hmm. They are willing to shed their blood to vote. That's why we got the right to vote. It had nothing to do with the writers of the Constitution deciding that at some point we were going to have that right. The writers of the Constitution saw us as being perpetual slaves. And if you read the history of the writing of the Constitution, it's very clearly stated there that they saw us as perpetual slaves. The only reason that we were counted, period, in the Constitution was simply because the South wanted to. When the House of Representatives was set up, and the House of Representatives was based upon population, and the Southerners fought it because they were not able to count their chattel property as population. So they reached a compromise, and the compromise was the establishment with every state having 2 senators, and with the Southerners being able to count their slaves as 3/5 of a man. And that would increase their representation in the House of Representatives. The Senate was never intended to be in the beginning. It came into being as a result of that compromise. So when you look at the history of it, we were intended to be perpetual slaves. There's nothing in the Constitution or in the writing of it that points to eventual freedom for us as chattel property, and looking at it, the reference to us was no different than the reference to a cow or a dog or an acre of land. We were simply property, period. So there was no sense of that at all in the eyes of those who were writing the Constitution. It just wasn't. Now, to the democratic aspects of it, again, I say that when we are traveling this journey of spirituality, becoming aware of who we are, there is no place for democracy at all. No place at all. We don't get a vote on what God said. We don't get a vote on spiritual laws. We don't. Either we accept it or we suffer the consequences. Now, it's not either we accept it or we don't. Either we accept it or we suffer the consequences. Because there are consequences to rebelling against spiritual laws that are already established. Always consequences. Now, when we get sick and tired of suffering the consequences, then we will begin to become more adamant about being aware of who we are and functioning that way. I don't want you at this juncture to get into the whole concept of the kingdom principles and the idea of our being our being in this world representative of a governmental power from the other world. That kind of stuff I want to talk about later on, but not at this juncture. What I do want to talk about now is I want to continue along this term because everyone in this room, at least I think anyway, and everyone who's listening to this broadcast, either now or later on, have probably heard this. If you read Revelation, you will get a blessing.
Yeah.
You've heard that, right?
No.
That is not what the scripture says. Well, we know you have. Thank God you have. We don't have enough as much mess to deal with, right? To uproot, rather. Go to verse 3.
Where are you?
Revelation 1st chapter, verse 3. When we look at verse 3, it says, "Blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the words of this prophecy, and keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand." What does that? You are blessed. It said, you're blessed if you read it, if you hear it, and if you keep it, if you adhere to it. The blessing is not some stuff. The blessing is the realization of who you are. Can you see that?
Well, blessed is he. You are the blessing, not.
Absolutely.
So you're manifesting the blessing. You're morphing into the blessing. I mean, what?
And by virtue of being the blessing, the question is, who are blessed by you? If you are the blessing. The whole of mankind is, even though they are not aware of who they are, and they are blessed because of your nature. And your nature is to do what? Your nature is to dominate this kingdom. And in dominating the kingdom, how did Yeshua dominate the kingdom? How did Yeshua set boundaries in the kingdom? How was he the king? Look at what happened. The Roman centurion comes to him and says, "Hey, dude, you don't have to come to my house to heal my kid. I'm a king. I'm a ruler. I'm a king. I understand how kingdom stuff work. I say to men, you go and they go. I say come and they come. You don't have to come to my house. All you got to do is speak the word and it's done. Because the kingdom principle functions based upon you knowing who you are." You understand what I'm saying to you?
Yes.
Not one of the disciples said that. Not one person in Israel said that. It was the Roman centurion because he understood kingdom principles.
Yeah.
We don't understand kingdom principles. We understand what is called the democratic principle. And the confusion is this. This has never been an established democracy. This is a republic that was formed. Not a democracy. And there's a difference between the two. So when we look at it from the perspective of being that blessing, you cannot be a blessing to mankind if you don't see yourself as a king. And I don't mean king in terms of someone who's going to be abusive. I'm talking about king in terms of the principles of the kingdom. That's what I'm talking about. When the king speaks, no one says, "Are you sure of that?" When the king makes a declaration, no one says, "Well, I think we need to change this sentence." Or "I think we need to word it differently." No one says that. When he issues an edict, that's it, isn't it? That's it. When Britain was boasting about the sun never goes down on its flag, whatever they said in Britain, wherever the British flag was, that's where it happened. Look at it to this day. They mix the kind of the governments. Off the shores of Britain, it was a kingdom. On the shores of Britain, it was a quote-unquote democracy. Off the shores of Britain, it was a kingdom. If you don't believe me, go to the islands and see what they drive on the left side of the road to this day. Put on wigs and go to Parliament. I mean, you see what I'm talking about? These are kingdom principles. So if you take this and look at it from a spiritual perspective, then what are we saying? It doesn't matter what your culture is. If you grasp the kingdom principles, if you accept the kingdom principles, you begin to emulate the king. You emulate the king. How do you do that? By following the principles. So what this verse is saying is that you become the blessing not just because you read it, but because you hear what you're reading. And when you hear what you're reading, you also keep it. You live it. You exercise it. This is your life. This is who you are. Any questions about this? Does it make sense?
It does. It's the same as you're saying. Like it resonates with you. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I'm going to leave Charlotte because I got a wedding. I forgot to tell y'all that at the beginning.
Show up for a little while. Bounce.
Yeah. Right, I'm going to bounce. But I'll be back. I'm going to come back next week.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Anyway, so after he talks about that, it said for the time is that the season is here. The time is here. Now, understand something. When we talk about time from a spiritual perspective, we are not talking about the same kind of time we're talking about. But when this is translated or interpreted, or when this is taught, it is taught as though the time of which the writer was speaking was the time in which he lived. It's not talking about that. It is talking about whatever season it is. And the season is not about the rotation of the earth. The season is about the acceptance of the reality of our existence.
Well, it's like planting. You know, every good farmer knows when it's time to plant, et cetera, et cetera. And so there has to be a season of time when the soils of somebody's heart are ready to receive, to hear, to receive, and to allow it to grow there.
So this is the ripeness we're talking about. Somebody being ripe.
Yeah. So it's not just, the seeds don't just get sown out there and grow up among the weeds, blah blah blah. So that's what it relates to too.
And the ripeness of time is here. The season is ripe for this, but what is ripe for has not been planted yet. It's in the process of being planted. Is that you understand? Mm-hmm. And what I mean by in the process is that understanding what's written in these words. These are the seeds that's being planted now. Now, and again, I say to you that maybe you've heard it, but I've not heard it the way I'm beginning to see it. I've not heard anyone say that Jesus obviously did not know everything because this had to be revealed to him. I've not heard anybody say that, and there are people who are probably scared to think it. But that's what's written in the book, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's there.
Now, then it says, it said, John, to the 7 churches which are in Asia, grace be unto you, and peace from which is, and which was, and which is to come, and from the 7 spirits which are before his throne, and from Jesus Christ. I'm going to look at verse 4 for a minute, and then I'm out. Look at what it said. To the 7 churches which are in Asia. This is not talking about geographical location as much as it is talking about a completeness. 7 deals with completeness. It doesn't say churches, it says assemblies. So it is talking about the completion. What it's talking about is that about the of the desires of an assembly. He's saying to those who are at this place of completeness, and completeness meaning you have Your heart has come to a place where it is beginning to commence a new journey. You're beginning to see that the things that you once thought were spiritually correct, you begin to see that they were not. If you think about it as a graduation or a commencement, graduation doesn't mean end. Graduation means you're moving forward. Commencement doesn't mean that something came to an end. It means something else is started. Completion doesn't mean that something comes to an end. It means that something else is started. You've gotten to a spot where there is time to start something new. Something else is commencing. So when he's talking about these complete messages that's going to the assemblies. And the assemblies are those who have gotten to a place of completion in this natural world of search, because all spiritual journeys began in the natural world. The problem is that they've begun and ended here as well. And that has to change.
But that just sparked something Janice said about, the movements that you talked about. Janice said it looked like nothing happened. Well, it may seem like nothing happened, but something did happen in the spiritual. It may not seem that it occurred in mass for a lot of people that we can see, but what you just said just resonated. All spiritual journeys begin with at least where we are in the physical. Yeah. So it did affect someone, somewhere, in a significant way. That's going to, at some point in time, affect the spiritual outcome as well. And that's one of the, I think, the principles that we gotta just accept and know. Because if we don't, then our assembling here in a physical way to discuss, these spiritual principles, there's no faith there. There's no, why are we doing it if we don't know that we know that what we say physically can resonate in the spirit.
And that in itself is an understanding and an acceptance of the unicity of the two worlds. Because the sound of my voice is a natural thing. But the breath that the sound travels on is not something you can see, it's a spiritual thing. You see? So that in itself, the very speech of it is intimacy between the two worlds. And that is the reason, Bob, you when you say that, something had to take, it did. Because every time that there is an action, there has to be something birthed from it. Because whenever whether it be the confusion or whether it be order, something is coming. Something is going to be birthed from it. It is going to be a positive growth, and I use that very loosely, or is going to be a negative consequence, and I use that loosely as well. But something is coming from it. There is no such thing as immobility. It doesn't exist. It may appear to be that, but there's no such thing as that. There's always movement. And it's funny because that's one of the primary things they were talking about when we were talking about Bill Land at the funeral. Said he's a mover. He was always moving. He's always the next thing to do. And people would look at the 15, 20 churches that is listed that he passed and say, my God, he had that many. Mm-hmm. But what people don't understand is, out of 15, 20 churches, he started over 95% of them, and then passed them off to somebody else and kept moving. You see? So it wasn't him. And when he got sick, when he found out that he had pancreatic cancer, he was establishing one in Austin. And actually laid the foundation so strong until they're building on that right now. So that's the kind of, anyway. Let me get back to that issue. Then it says, grace be unto you and peace. Then it talks about, John says, this is where it comes from. It's not coming from me, John, right? Mm-hmm. It's coming from him which is, and which was, and which is to come. Why is it that he does not name an entity? He does not say from the Lord. He has to be talking about the source. For him not to label it, because keep in mind, when we go further, we see him. He could not possibly be talking about Jesus, because Jesus is the third one he talks about. He talks about the spirit that's before the throne before he talks about Jesus. You see? Mm-hmm. So he has to be talking about from the source of all sources. So what is John? What the foundation is he laying here? What John is saying here is that the message that you are about to receive comes from someone who recognizes not only your strength but also your weaknesses. And what they're sending to you from me is grace and peace. In other words, balance, beauty, and peace. A sense of calmness about you. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Now, if the source of all sources is sending grace and peace, the only reason we don't experience it is because we choose not to. Because this is the principle, this is the spiritual principle. If it's a spiritual principle, it's him. It's present, isn't it? Yeah. It's just as present as gravity. It's just as present as the air that you breathe. And why have we not accepted it? Because we've not been made aware. And when we are made aware, the question then comes, how do we accept it? How do we accept it? We accept it by refusing to continue our lives in an imbalanced manner, and by refusing to allow circumstances, either external or internal, to create havoc in us and bring about a warring nature within us, to have things battling. That's how we do it. I was talking to this guy last night as we were standing there waiting at the wedding rehearsal, and he was talking about stress will kill you, and I said, not me, you. I don't stress over nothing anymore. Whatever it is, that's what it is. What am I saying to you? I have made a choice to live in peace. And living in peace does not mean the absence of volatility. Living in peace means be peaceful in spite of the volatility that you face. You got that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, Lord.
And I refuse to continue my life out of balance. When I feel something pulling me, I can sense it. You know when something is pulling you out of balance. You know when that's happening. And if I have to pull on the side of the road and breathe to stop it, I will do that. Because I refuse to live a life out of balance. Why? Because I know what's available to me. Grace and peace is available to all of us, to every man on earth. All right? Because it comes from him who is, was, and is to come. And from the seven spirit, the clear, the completeness, all the spirit that man needs, all the breath, everything that man needs is before the thrones. Everything that you need. There's absolutely nothing that you need that's not available. Absolutely nothing. Why? Because Yahweh is shepherding me, I have no lack.
What does it say which is to come?
Which is to come is coming to you.
Okay. Okay.
Okay?
Gotcha.
What are the, sorry. Grace and peace, is that the equivalent of where he says he'll leave a comforter? Is that the same
Yes and no.
concept?
The concept of the comforter, that whole scripture was misinterpreted or mistranslated. Because, and I'll get you in a moment, Audrey. When Jesus talked about that, he was talking about his spirit. As long as I'm here with you in the physical, I can't be ubiquitous. But when I leave, my spirit will feel, my spirit will teach you. Wherever it talks about name, it's talking about his teachings. Whenever it talks about, whenever he's referencing the Holy Spirit, he's referencing because there is one spirit. One spirit. There's only one Adam. You know, one spirit, one Adam. You got that?
Yeah.
See, Adam is not a physical entity. It's a spiritual being. And when it talks about Jesus being the superior Adam, it's not talking about superior in terms of him being another Adam. It's talking about his conceptual understanding of who the Adam is. Got it? If we don't, this whole thing is a thing of concepts. And if we do not do what we are doing now, and we start talking about these concepts, and you're not on the same page, you don't know what we're talking about. It's not, everyone on earth do not have to understand this, but you do. The intricate details is necessary for you to understand it, because when questions are raised, you don't know which one's going to be raised, and you can address them. But there are those who will never understand or accept, or it doesn't matter. Everyone did not accept what Yeshua taught. Everyone did not accept what Moses did. Did they? It doesn't matter.
Right.
What matters is that you do what you're supposed to do.
Did you talk about the seven spirits? What are the seven spirits?
I just said they are the complete breath or spiritual entities that you need. Everything that you need. And you're going to see it more clearly when it talks about the angels, the seven messages, and the seven spirits. The spirit is talking about, the spirit is talking about, for lack of another method of explaining it, it's talking about nothing other than breath. All the spiritual essence that you need is available to you because it is before the throne. Keep in mind, this message is to the people who are to come in this earth. Look at where it starts. The source of all sources, right?
Mm-hmm.
The spirit, right? Which was Adam. And then it talks about the man Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So it goes from the upper world to the lower world. It's bringing both worlds together. And what's between those two worlds? The seven spirits. You see the connection between the two? You see the connection between the two? I got you, Richard. And the earlier when I talked about speaking and breath,
Yeah,
the merging of the two worlds, the
okay.
same connection between the two. Jesus is the word, right?
Yes,
Yep.
We speak words, right?
yes,
On the breath, right?
Yep.
That's what binds it.
okay.
I'm trying to reconcile this, and I seem to be coming to, I think part of our, or maybe my, difficulty is when you say kingdom, principles of kingdom and kingdom aren't the same in the sense that in your mind, for me, when you say kingdom, particularly when you're talking about Rome, etc., you're talking about the structure. And yet, I think what you're talking about is not the structure, but it's the principle.
Right.
And the point is, it's very easy to confuse the baby in the bathwater on that one. We're not talking about a new pope
Right.
who then says what is true. We're talking about, if you almost want in a scientific way, the true laws of nature, and those are laws. Things function on the basis of those truths. That's the principle, the kingdom principle. You don't negotiate that. You don't say, but what if we bend it this way or that way? You find out the truth of that deviation, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you got to let go any notion of your head, which is how it gets quickly taken over of hierarchy.
Right.
And we're saying the most revolutionary part, so to speak, is none of that.
None of it.
It's got nothing to do with the way ignorance has structured and defined that. It's simply saying, I guess it's cleaner to me to almost say it in a scientific way, the true law, the true laws that govern how the universe works.
Cannot be changed.
They cannot be changed. They only can appear to be changed because you don't know the true law yet. You're 2 or 3 iterations away from it. So your formula isn't the truth. It's almost the truth. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it has deviation and exception built into it.
It's a shadow of the truth, but it's not
It's
the
It's
truth.
off the mark. It's,
Right.
you know.
And that is it in a nutshell when we talk about it. Because see, let me inject this, and then on the heels of what you just said, when we're talking about the kingdom. The most powerful person the ambassador. Not the senator, not the representative, but the ambassador. Because when an ambassador goes to another country, if an ambassador leaves here and goes to Canada, America's in Canada. If a senator leaves and goes to Canada, senators in Canada. You see the difference? If a senator gets slapped, you slap the senator. If an ambassador gets slapped, you got an international incident. You see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
So an ambassador is different. That's the difference between a senator in a democracy and an ambassador from a kingship. And I didn't want to get into this right now, but when you brought that up, I think this is a spot for it. The ambassadorship, the ambassador that we are, whether we recognize it or not, means that if you do anything to the least of mine, it is better for you to tie a millstone around your neck and be cast into the ocean. In other words, if you touch an ambassador, it's hell to pay. That's the message that's being sent. When the scripture says, vengeance is mine, says the Lord, he's saying, you are an ambassador, you don't fight wars. You don't do that. That's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to represent, period. And when it said vengeance is mine, vengeance is not necessarily killing anyone, or vengeance is not slapping somebody because they slap you. Vengeance is the greatest vengeance you can pay. World. And that's, you cannot have that paradigm shift if you don't question. You can't have that paradigm shift if you're sitting there and you're saying, you're pondering it. Well, I have a question, but I don't know what to ask. Just start talking. At some point you get the answer.
But like the ambassador physically, who represents, stands in the place of, in the stead of, the president or whomever, in whatever.
Right.
That ambassador has to speak for, using the same verbiage and words, that the intent of that president or that country. And so we as ambassadors can't just, spiritually, can't just go out and do our own thing either. So we have to be mindful, which is not really the right word.
Right. Aware.
Other mindful, aware that we can't just say anything we want to say from our own ego,
Right.
our own perspective, because we are not representing ourselves. We're representing the source of all life that we are one with. So it just puts a whole nother dimension on it. And we can't go out saying all of this negative stuff.
That's right.
I mean, it just changes stuff.
You know, you can't do that. You know, ask Adler Stephen when Kennedy recalled him from the UN because of a statement that he made. He said, we called him back to D.C. and said, you know, I'm the president. Because if something he made in reference to the Cold War without having permission to say it, and he recalled him from the UN and chastised him for it, that's the ambassador. When Miles Monroe's plane went down the other night, I was told that Andrew Young was supposed to be on that plane, but the weather prevented him from flying to the place where they were supposed to meet. And they said, the person said, I bet he's glad he wasn't on that plane. So he's not the only one who's glad he wasn't on that plane. I am. Because if Andrew Young had been on that plane, you wouldn't have heard anything about Miles Monroe. Would have been a blip on the radar. Because the ambassador, Andrew Young, would have been the overshadowing figure who met his demise on that plane.
So Miles Monroe got died.
Yes.
Got dead.
The plane crashed.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, his plane crashed last week. And anyway, my thoughts about that were as I stated, but much further than that, I began to, it's funny how I began to see some things more clearly than I've seen them in the past. And I do attribute that to the relationship that we had. He is the one who was my inspiration to teach the way I teach. He's the one. I give him all the credit for that because it's true. Let me end it by saying this. We talked about the ones before. The place of authority. Throne is not some place where somebody's sitting. It's talking about authority, right? We understand that. And from, it's almost like Jesus Christ is an afterthought. And from, you see that? And from Jesus Christ, who is the faithful witness and the first begotten. Yahidai, begotten. It's not only begotten that there are no more precious or for this purpose. The same word that's used for begotten in the New Testament when it references only begotten son is used in with Abraham referencing Isaac. I think it's the 12th chapter maybe of Genesis, verses 12 and 22, when it talks about his precious son or his only son. It's that same word for begotten is there, and we know that that was not his only son. So this is if Jesus was the only begotten, then how was Isaac a begotten? So he's not talking about that, and I will go further into that next week. But I want, and then we're going to talk about the whole concept of what it means, the faithful witness, because the idea of witness is not talking about somebody who was faithful enough to say something. He's talking about someone who was committed to die for what they said.
That is faithful. Wow.
Because the word that's translated as faithful, I'm sorry, as witness there, is the same word from which we get the word martyr. So it's talking about someone who was willing to die for what they believe. Why? And Elder gave the response that most of us give. Wow, and the reason is because we have not wrapped our mind around who we are.
Well,
So we have a misconception of dying for something.
or
So,
dying, period.
yes, right. And the reason he died was to show us that death wasn't the end. You see?
Yeah.
So I'm almost leery of allowing the word death or die to come from my lips, because death has absolutely no meaning whatsoever in relationship to how we define it. Because we define death or to die as an end of something, when is a portion of a journey having been complete. If I believe for a second that that was the end, then there is no way I can believe that one of the reasons a Miles Monroe would have to transition the way he did is because he has seen some things and now he sees it more clearly and is able to influence us in this realm. I believe that with everything inside of me. I believe that. And I'm going to pick up with this fourth verse next week, and I want to walk through that, because between verses 4 and 6, that's who we are. That's the foundation of who we are. And if we can grasp that, we're on the right road. Okay.
I'm gonna read it. You're gonna make me start reading. I think I'm being converted.
Okay, we are done, and
One question, who is Miles Monroe?